Welcome back to the weekly installment of our coverage of Sir James Frazer's The Golden Bough. Today we're going to be talking about chapter 26, The Sacrifice of the King's Son. I think we'll be able to cover that in relatively short order. But I don't know, for whatever reason, it seems like we've really hit a vein with some of this research, especially looking at all the archetypes that constellate around JFK. If you're not familiar with what we do here, we do something that has evolved into archetypal psychohistory, where we apply Jungian concepts to the enantiodrama on the world stage. And we've looked at the alchemical marriage, or that's kind of the conclusion that we've come to, that the Apollo missions have this as an alchemical output or an end. And we've been looking at some of the terrestrial players. And so JFK, Marilyn Monroe, Jackie O are going to be a big focus of today, and their overlapping archetypes. So before we get into it and talk about some of the images on the title card, I want to welcome Osik from Northern India and the lovely producer Jordan. Hey guys.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys felt particularly inspired this week, but typically it takes me, really up until the last minute to get all my slides together for us to do this. And I think by Wednesday I was already exploding with information. I had to put like a governor on myself and be like, okay, no more. Let's try to get some Christmas shopping done.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when it's like it's giving everything. Oh
It
God,
really is.
I messed it up. It's like, it's raining or
Yeah.
everything.
It is giving. It is giving. Your Gen Z speak is fine here. So yeah, it was a particularly inspired week. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today, I'll just go around the images on the card here in no particular order. We had some loose ends to clean up from last time. We didn't get a chance to discuss the relationship between 3 and 7 to the Apollo missions. I'm not going to dwell too long on it. In fact, I could probably cover it here, but we'll wait till we get to it. I want to acknowledge the influence. I've been listening via voice stream to John Shelby Downard's work, which there's some overlap with what I'm doing here. I don't necessarily posit that there are secret societies in control of all this mythopoetic language. I tend to think that this is the collective unconscious and that God is in control of all of it. But still, as a starting point, throughout this presentation, there are going to be probably 4 or 5 slides that were directly inspired by some of the observations that he made. Now, I ran with those, but I want to get this out of the way in an acknowledgement in case I don't credit him as we go through this, because it's easy to get caught up in the moment. We're going to begin to look at the Arthurian legend that surrounds Kennedy, specifically with Camelot. And what's so interesting about this is that there is a parallel alchemical output from the Arthurian legends from a Jungian point of view. He didn't really have a chance to cover them in depth. His Emma Young and Marie von Franz did in the Grail legends, although that's a little bit more about Parsifal. I've got to go deeper into it. But ultimately, the Arthurian legends involve the Holy Grail. And I think what Jung had to say there is that the Holy Grail is similar to the Philosopher's Stone, which at the present moment we've identified with the blue marble. And all this stuff about Camelot got me thinking about horses and the association with Apollo and knights and things like that. So we're going to look a little bit at horse imagery today. We're going to look at a sacred animal of Apollo and how it constellates around JFK. That is the dolphin. Downer brought that to my attention, although I found more instances of it. And there, I meant to look this up this morning. It came to me in the middle of the night. I wanted to look deeper into it. But something that was beyond fascinating to me is shortly before the assassination, Jackie took a trip to the Delphic ruins in Greece. And we're going to really go into this and what she did while she was in Greece. She actually took 2 trips. I found I had conflated them. She took one in 1961 and 1963, and both are very fascinating because the one that she took in 1961, she had a friend who was a Greek tragedian, playwright, or director, I should say, an actor. And he took her to a performance of Electra. Okay, Sophocles' Electra, which, if you know anything about it, which I didn't know much before I did the research today, is very applicable to the character of Jackie O. And the last thing I want to talk about here is how these archetypes, unbeknownst to the people that are involved in making our culture, pop up in silly ways. And we're going to look at um, The Simpsons and how it seems to be harmonizing with everything that we've talked about here. And it'll make perfect sense when we get there. There's so many other subjects we're going to talk about, but if you want to stay on, these are some of the things we'll be talking about. This is just a fraction of what will go on over the next 2.5 hours. So without further ado, I'll yield the mic to Ostic and Jordan, and we'll start covering the Frazer chapter.
Yeah, I'm pumped. It's been a constant conversation this week.
Yeah. It really has. Jordan, I share a lot of what I'm doing with Jordan. I want to hold it back so she's surprised when we do these presentations, but it's always good to get her feedback.
Yeah, the Simpsons stuff is interesting. I'm curious how much is intentional and how much is not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff throughout the show that we won't touch on today, but other people have covered.
Oh yeah, for sure. It only makes sense as something that's been running for like 35 years on television would have some alchemical thread through it all.
So true.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it is inevitable.
When designing like t-shirts and stuff this week, I was thinking too about how like all roads lead to alchemy or something
Yeah.
along that
Yeah.
theme.
Yeah.
To I don't know, to your dismay, but maybe to your surprise or resistance, that's where all of this went.
I'm not surprised at all. Not anymore.
Yeah.
Lastic, do you want to say anything before we move on?
Let's get this moving.
Okay, let's get going. All right. So the first slide here, I'm going to just give a quick summation of the chapter. We have looked at the killing of the king ritual in a variety of different ways so far, but we'll get another little wrinkle in it today from Frazer, an intermediate step. Last time we talked about how the regicide became ceremonial, but there is this step in between just the ritualistic celebration of regicide without any actual murder or death involved, and the sacrifice of the king's son. So we've established that given the spiritualized universe of the individuals that are participating in these cultures, the king has a very special role in the sense that he centers, grounds, and stabilizes everything. And if there's any sign of infirmity, any sign of sickness or trouble, ultimately his life is sacrificed, and then through metempsychosis or transmigration, then goes into a new body. Although this is interesting when you start thinking about, does it necessarily have to be in someone's line? And that's where we get to things today. It is seen that the closest proxy to the king, because once you get power, you don't want to relinquish it, not only because you don't want to die, but you start to see the futility of the slaughter of oneself if you're specifically a adept king at maintaining political order. In a way, it's suicide of the nation for the king, if he's especially good ruler, to continue to kill himself. So the next closest proxy would be the sun. There is some idea that the sun retains that connection, that magical connection to God and the soul. And so in a way, the king can have access to a bevy of his offspring in order to continue to renew his kingship and avoid sacrifice himself. And over time, this becomes increasingly rare, but in moments of intense crisis, it can occasionally be resorted to in times of plague, famine, and war. So that is generally the idea. There's going to be a lot of examples that come up in this. I think there's the example of the ewes that were sent to the labyrinth that we've talked about in regards to Theseus. We're going to look at more of that later today, specifically in regards to a book by Mary Renault. But even you can start to see, I was listening to it again this morning, and Frazer concludes the chapter talking about Phoenicians having this King Kronos had a son named Jude that would be sacrificed. And I think I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but I have a feeling what Frazer is talking about there is like, hey, look, doesn't this sound a lot like the Christ story and the sacrifice of the son that's going on there? He doesn't draw it out, but I can tell what he's doing is trying to analogize, hey, look, maybe Jehovah and Cronus have some sort of connection, and this son named Jude is very similar to Jesus Christ. So I wanted to have some time to do that, but it just wasn't in the cards. So that is the gist of the chapter for today. Do you guys want to add anything to it?
This idea of the obligations passing through the lineage is very interesting to me personally. I'm learning more about the courts of chancery and equity law and all these things. But thinking today, too, how different, at least in the Western world, I can't speak to other cultures. We, I can see pros and cons basically of this concept of the lineage being this kind of continuous stream that perhaps both maintains wealth and power, but also um, some of that wealth and power is presumably because people know if we do deals with you, they're going to be honored in perpetuity, like throughout the family line. That's just so different than how we operate today. I don't have a super tight thesis on it, but I just thought it was interesting and thinking too, now, somebody dies, depending on how things are structured, you can't hold their kids accountable for that credit card loan that they took out. That's many people are tricked into thinking that, but I just find that interesting. There's both a strength and I think a weakness to that thinking in both directions. We're just more atomized. And
Yeah.
I'm also curious how much is this because they had power, right? Like those trade-offs might make sense if you have true power in a way that most individuals even in these times did not.
Ostic, what say you?
I agree with Jordan. I think the idea that jumped out to me most while reading this chapter was like, apart from all these stories were quite complicated and fantastical, I should say. And idea that jumped out to me was the idea of sins of the father. Uh, the the son, the child dies because the father had committed a sin in the past, and it's like a curse that follows them. So this idea, it replicates itself in so many ways. I mean, it's not just the king, it's like it replicates in wars, like
Yep.
people, they fight generals, they sacrifice their own children. I mean, those soldiers, they are like children because they don't know anything about it, they're just thrown into it, and then the generals are fighting amongst themselves. So it's like this idea of paternalism, and like why it could be harmful. And like the son is, he does not even know, like in one of the stories the son does not even know, they just walk in and suddenly they are sacrificed, they walk
Yeah.
into the court. So it's like this idea of that you're living in a world that has already been set up to take retribution from you, and you're not even aware of it. So that's a important idea for me. Like I see it repeating every time, and like even in present days context with all these crises going on, we can see it. Other
It
thing
really
is that
does. Don't you think it really adds a new layer to the expression "heavy is the head that wears the crown"? Like, had we not done the study, I don't think I'd ever really contemplated, just how regimented, how ritualistic all the king's life was, and then the possibility of just having to breed children in order to sacrifice them to stay in power, or for the good of the nation if you're a little bit more altruistically motivated. And the thing I I'll throw this out there because you've I don't want to forget it, and you mentioned it sort of is I'm not exactly sure. The claim is by Downard and others that like this killing of the king ritual is like the justification for the Kennedy assassination, all this other stuff. But when you start to think about these sons that are dipped into, or these youths that are dipped into in order to preserve the king's legacy, one can't help but think about the curse of the Kennedys and how this seems to the death that and scandal that seems to follow them around. It also, interestingly enough, and we'll talk about this, it's also a feature of Electra, of Sophocles' Electra. All the death and destruction there seems to constellate around the house of Atreus, which in some ways analogizes with the Kennedy clan.
Yeah, I was just getting to it. I was thinking of giving an
Oh,
example of
sorry, I
JFK
stole your
Jr.
thunder.
It's
I
not,
stole your
it's
thunder.
okay. I mean, it's your show.
Go
It's
ahead.
your show.
Yeah, yeah, no,
I
no, no.
mean,
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, nothing. I'm just. It was just an example in passing that this is actually happening with the Kennedys as well. That the
Ah,
children are being targeted. And I mean, if you're a son of a person with such a stature in society, you are expected to, have some kind of a you are expected to carry his lineage. It's like you're expected to carry his glory. And if you fail to, match the thunder of your father or something, then you are judged quite harshly, like more than any normal person would be judged. And it's like people, they think it's fair game to, humiliate these people, take shots at them. I mean, they only think that because they think that these people are rich, so what matters, I can say anything about them. And these people, they get really mentally traumatized. It's like they can't trust anyone. I mean, I'm just trying to think about from their perspective, like what it means to be in that family. And like
yeah. I
it's
mean,
like whenever,
I've been thinking of I've been thinking about that in regards to JFK Jr.,
yeah,
and
yeah.
how it illustrates what you have to say, like how much grief he took for failing the bar a couple times before being able to pass it, and trying to establish his own identity of his father's shadow.
Yeah, I mean, RFK Jr. as well, he was like hooked on to heroin for a long time.
That's
It's
right.
like,
That's right.
and I mean, that was a tragic thing, that because I think he might have been a teenager when his father was killed. Or was he? I'm not sure. He looks old. So like, for a child's father dying and for a teenager, that's a different thing. Like teenager, they take it very personally, I think, more than a small 4 year, 3-year-old child would. Then again, like, it's like the Hunter Biden thing. These people, I mean, I'm not trying to defend them. It's like they are in a system where they're supposed to, carry this weight of, the heavy lies the head that wears the crown. And it's like they're constantly bombarded with a lot of pressures from outside. So it's like, it's there. And none of them even asked for this. They wanted to have a normal life, but if you're a son of a president or something, they would not be allowed to go into a random school. You would not be allowed to socialize with normal boys. If you're going to socialize, you'll be socialized with, Michael Jackson or something, as a child. And like, it's like, it's a weird childhood. So it's like, it's not a sacrifice. I was also thinking about, I've been reading about the American Civil War for the past
Mm.
week, just for fun. I mean, I caught up onto it. I wanted to see, like, where did, like, this slavery thing emerge, like how did they happen to have that, and then what happened later, and then what were people's actual reactions, because we are told like this was against slavery. Then there are other narratives, other thinkers that content to it. So the thing was that I was thinking about from Abraham Lincoln. I'm like, a lot. I was driving. I was thinking about him. I'm like, why he died, and so many reenactments happen of his death, and like, it's like people can. If I were his family, I would feel so sad that I have to see his death being replicated everywhere in media, in stories, in songs, and everything. And he's become this symbol that is unrecognizable from who he was as a person. Like what his actual thing was. It's like it's not even him anymore. It's a collective energy, a myth that people
Right.
utilize for themselves. So it's like
Right.
whenever you become a king or a person of interest, you let go of your personal life. You become, it's like you're part of everyone's family. It's like you're in everybody's home suddenly, and people can deal with you personally. I I mean, that's the psychological effect of being a public persona in that regard.
Right.
And if you have some real political power, and like you affect people's lives, they take it very personally. So it's a different game. It's not anywhere close to what reality is, but it's like it's a different difficult position to be in, that uncomfortable position to be that leader, I think.
So what I'm taking away from this conversation is that even though I don't think I want to make the extreme claim that like, okay, like the Illuminati is out here forcing people to sacrifice their sons or anything like that, but still the pattern remains that there is something of the compromise of the progeny's life for the sake of the ambitions of the king. It's just a cycle kind of built into family dynamics in some way.
Yeah, I would say you see this too in a smaller way. It, maybe personally, Luke. I think you you know, not you know what I mean? But there's always this tension. I think I see it a lot in my own life with older siblings, even overshadowing younger siblings who then everyone they interact I'm just trying to throw out more micro examples of how this pattern plays out that more people might relate to. But, anytime like your family name has a particular reputation, other people interact with you through that lens. An example that isn't as dramatic as these high profile, power wielding, geopolitically very important families is the Mannings. You see Arch Manning,
That's right.
he's a quarterback for the
Yeah.
University of Texas football team. And there's so much energy pointed at that franchise. It's very emotionally relevant to a lot of people. He comes from a lineage of very high profile, very successful players. And just like you said, Ostick, there's so much scrutiny of him that would not be there if he wasn't from this lineage. Other people would not be getting the same there's pros and cons in many ways. I'm sure it helped catapult him onto the scene in a way that others don't have, and access to different opportunities or training or strategy and all these things, right? That's what you get as the son of a king. And it's really difficult to avoid that archetypal projection onto you. And I can only imagine how difficult that would be personally, individually, to take on and still stay clear headed at such a
Yep.
young age.
Yeah. True, true.
True, true.
All right. I think
Okay. Watching the clock.
I am watching the clock. So let's go to the next one, unless anybody else
Yeah.
wants to say something here. Okay. All right. So now we get into the schizo stuff, which really uh, is better than all the caffeine I could drink this morning. So let's get it going. All right. So last time we were looking at potentially the esoteric, intentional or not, meaning of Marilyn Monroe performatively reading certain texts. The ones that we dwelled on were her reading Ulysses at a playground, and also How to Increase Your Thinking Ability, where she was laying against a silvery bedspread. And I made this commentary that this is in a way foreshadowing the relationship that she would have with JFK, and perhaps as an anima moon figure, a lunar figure, beckoning the space race to come and consummate. And I thought a little bit more about it after the conversation. I was like, she poses with like 20 or 25 different books, and I was just going through them, and some of them are like dime store novels that don't mean anything to me. But I was like, is there some precedent that her holding the Ulysses text and like assimilating it into her mind is, can we give it a little bit more juice and say that this is a forerunner of some sort of alchemical marriage that is in play on the world stage? And I went back to she actually has two photos where she's reading Arthur Miller books. I had no idea when they were taken. I assumed that they were taken around the time that she was dating or married to him or something like that. They're not. They're not. They're from 1951. And she does not marry Arthur Miller until 1956. It's possible that she had some sort of passing encounter with him in 1951, but of all the images that I could find, there's only one where she's posed with two of the same. I think someone might need to fact check on me. She's posing in this one particular shoot with Miller's An Enemy of the People, and then also Death of a Salesman, which we could go into the meaning of those texts and what might actually be going on here. But I think it does sort of establish she's in some way, it seems, whether intentional or not, seems to be foreshadowing or invoking the marriage that she's going to have with Miller 5 or 6 years later. And I went back and I got a little bit more of the air quotes metadata from the Ulysses shoot, which was done in 1955. And she doesn't really, supposedly she doesn't really have the encounter with JFK, I think, until 62 in the famous birthday singing or whatever, where she's introduced as the late Marilyn Monroe, forecasting her own early demise. But I went back and I looked at this, and it was actually taken by a woman named Eve Arnold. And I found that so interesting, especially since we've talked about Ulysses and Penelope being the sun and the moon, being archetypes of sun and the moon, the sun, the wandering sun returning to the moon, and her being Molly Bloom and Penelope. But also in previous episodes, we've talked about Adam and Eve being symbols of the alchemical marriage between sun and moon. So the fact that the photographer of this picture is named after the first woman is really bizarre to me. And you start to think about that, you know, I said last time I stopped short of really going into the fact that she's on the carousel, which I thought maybe that connected with the cycle of the moon, but the fact that she took it at a playground. Well, playground is a symbol of childhood innocence and where there is no work and toil. It's just play. And I was like, that's Eden. That's Eden. So Eve taking the photo in a playground, uh, perhaps entangling herself with this alchemical figure that's in the marriage, jumped out at me. So I just wanted to follow up with that conversation from last time. What do you guys think when you look at this? Oh, the other thing, we're gonna the I remembered that JFK did this book, Profiles in Courage. I guess he did this while he was recovering from a back problem that he was having, where he regaled everybody about his time in World War II. And it becomes increasingly obvious to me as I got into some of the details of his life, which we'll look at, that his military experience and even some of his presidential experience mirrors the arc of Ulysses. It's not just that he loved the poem by Tennyson, Ulysses, and he's got this uncanny synchronicity with Lincoln, who had the general Ulysses. It's that his life, in some ways, as a Navy officer, which is pretty much what Ulysses was, mirroring that archetypal arc. So I'll pause there and let you guys comment on this photo or this collage. Anything jump out to you? No.
It's it's super fun. I'm really drawn to her expression in the wedding photo.
Right, and his lack of expression.
He's
Right.
very focused. I mean, this to me is very much a visual representation of that like masculine, feminine kind of divine union in a way. You know, he's very like focused on the task and like, um, yeah, I don't know. Like she's just often you don't I don't know. It's what I can say is it's drawing me in a way that some of these other photos don't of her, not just here, do
Well, you're right.
not.
You're right to point it out. And this is just this weird phenomenon. You know, you're right to point it out. She's looking at him with, she's happy. She's
Yeah.
looking at him with awe. And so
Yes.
the story goes with the marriage of Miller and Monroe is, he was a very serious intellectual guy, who got with the seductress that everybody wanted. But apparently, I'm not some expert in this. I just kind of studied up on it preparing for this presentation. Is that she came across some diaries that he had been writing, where he confesses in the diary that he's embarrassed of her, that
Mm,
like I don't know. And we talk about photos foreshadowing. We looked at the image where JFK and RFK and Monroe are together, and Harry Belafonte's in the back, and it's like, okay, it's clearly foreshadowing something. Both of their early demises. You can kind of see the doomed marriage here. He's not as in love with her as she is with him.
yeah, it's an
I
interesting observation. I didn't know that about his
Yeah.
journals.
Hey,
But
I should
yeah,
never
I'd
write these
overlooked
things
it. Had you?
down.
What's that?
And no one should write these things down. I mean, it's like it's an awful thing to write about. It also reminds me of that scene in Lolita where he's like, no, we shouldn't read people's diaries, and he's calling her Charlotte Hayes, like she's a cow or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just
I did personally learn my lesson after a family member transitioned, and it's like, oh, I shouldn't be reading this. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, Luke. Yeah, I love, we've said this before, but I love always looking at where are people's eyes in photos? What are they pointing to? I think Kubrick does this a lot in his stuff as well. You can tell that line of sight is really important to him. And you even see it in a lot of the photographs his daughter helped take in the behind the scenes things.
Mm.
Where the eyes are pointed to, there's always some type of story going on that gives you more insight into. So I like that you pointed that out.
I
And
would not
even
have.
with all the books, like she's fixated on the intellectual stuff. And I think in many ways, archetypally, she's trying to demonstrate this holistic, unified, inner alchemical marriage of the intellect and the sensual that perhaps people don't see her as, but that's what I see coming through here. And even with the playground, right? It's the bringing of the divine inner child with the, more advanced adult intellectual version of the self and integrating them.
I mean, what do you? By the way, I had you not directed my attention to their expressions. It was a detail. There's just so many details. It's very easy to overlook all this. So I appreciate you guys giving it to me. I mean, what do you guys make of this idea that she's holding Miller twice, and then she holds him in real life, and she's got what looks to be the proxy for JFK, in my opinion, archetypally, with the famous Ulysses photograph, and then supposedly, according to American myth, has an affair with him. I mean, does this if I were to show this to somebody who just a normie and be like, oh, that is like totally bizarre. There might actually be something like beyond um beyond normal, beyond something paranormal, something archetypal happening here. Would any of this be convincing? Does this make the case a little stronger that she performatively reads with one man and gets with him, and then the archetype of another, and she gets with him in the modern consciousness?
I really hesitate to take those rumors in any direction because I personally just don't know. Right. But what I do know is that's the narrative, that's the story that's playing out culturally, that's the movie of the society. So just restricting it to that alone, I think it's interesting. Like there's obviously this attraction to these very masculine modes, right? That I think in some ways she's maybe trying to integrate into herself, or at least that's the movie we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think it's compelling.
What do you think, Ostic?
Yeah. This is for the first time I've looked at a Marilyn Monroe photo
Yeah.
for so long. It's like, ah,
I
she was
know,
Yeah.
pretty.
and
I used to think she
and
was
tragic.
overrated. Yeah.
And tragic. I've looked at so many pictures at her before. And knowing what we know, air quotes know, some people would dispute that we know anything about what we're talking
Mhm.
about here, because it's so speculative. But when you can see the future is like following this woman around, it adds a heaviness to all these photographs.
Mhm.
Sometimes I think about, I mean, she was a master at managing her image in public consciousness. That is well known. People don't give her too much credit for that, but she knew what she was doing most of the time. I mean, when she was signing up movies, she knew what she was signing them for, like how it would suit her image and things like that. So she was a smart woman in that regard. I think what Arthur Miller wrote in his diary was because of the public perception of it all. But I think she was a more intelligent woman than most people try to give her credit for. Other than that, sometimes I think about like these are the things that we might find in our own lives. Like I like the analysis
Yeah.
about the Ulysses thing, but with the Arthur Miller thing, it's like they're in the same league, sort of. They're playing in the same, rounding in the same circle. So it's not very unlikely that they would sometimes meet, and like she would suddenly remember, oh, I read your book, and he's like, oh yeah, sure, sure, would like to go out sometime. It's like it could start up there. So it's like it's not that, I mean, it could be that God is orchestrating all of it, but it's like there's a affinity to it when you're in that circle, and when you're trying to, attending parties and everything, because their whole lives are around parties and, doing things. They don't sit around and think. They do things all the time, these actors and these socialites and everything. All they do is do. So it's like, it's all action, and the more actions you will take, the more chances are you to get to some place where you might encounter that person in real life, and then you take that opportunity, and then you make that a reality, like in your mind. It's like
Mm.
that is the less. It's like, I don't think I would associate it's like making it stronger. This one, but in particular, the Arthur Miller thing, because he was in the public zeitgeist. Sometimes I think about why, if I think statistically, like, why did John meet Paul on that fateful day when it was his first day of playing in with his band, the Quarrymen?
Mm.
Like, if that wouldn't have happened, the Beatles wouldn't have happened. But it's like John was inviting Paul because he was playing. I mean, he was not sitting around like in his room. He was inviting Paul. He was sending out signals for someone like Paul to come in. That increases those chances for meeting that person, you know. So it's like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's
Jordan, I have a
creating a magnet kind of thing. Yeah. So it's
yeah.
like that. We, I
Um,
think that's what
you know,
she's doing
some
right now.
yeah, something that could maybe make this a little bit more compelling, or maybe not. The people that are going to be skeptical are always going to be skeptical. I have not critically thought about the substance of these Arthur Miller books that she's posing with, The Enemy of the People and Death of a Salesman. I read Death of a Salesman like like when I was 17 years old.
Mhm.
I remember it was one of the first plays or books that really resonated with me. I was not a huge I had not made the turn into loving literature like I have now, but I remember it struck me. And even back then, like I think the main character is named Willie Loman, and I was like, oh, like low man, like a man of low class. So um, I wonder if the Ulyssian theme were to be found in these other two texts, if that would make this more or less compelling. But I want to bracket that thought, and we got to get
I
going
have
because
an
we're
interjection
okay.
though.
All right, we were at
I'll make
37
it
minutes.
brief.
Yeah.
Um, I There's other examples of this feminine hero's journey, I would say, of trying to strive for the masculine intellect and things like that playing out with Paris Hilton. You see a lot of that. She's kind of pulled back the curtain, she clearly has different modes and different voices and different characters that she has very strategically and intentionally portrayed in the public eye, which is fascinating. I think there's a lot of overlap with what you kind of talked about here, Ostic. And then even Kim Kardashian, Kim Kardashian's
Oh
been
yeah.
in the presses talking about trying to pass the bar and going
Yeah,
to
that's
law
right.
school. So it's interesting that there's even women who have achieved this high degree of success for playing a very stereotypical feminine archetype, there's this seemingly inevitable magnetization within them to try to integrate the wholeness. And that's just really interesting to me. I observe it in myself as well. So I wanted to point out those more contemporary examples of the same pattern.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, very Legally Blonde. Okay.
Love
Um,
Legally Blondes, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah. A lot of women do, and perhaps we've tapped into it. Okay. So I mentioned I'm not gonna dwell on it too long here because there's a lot of details of Kennedy's life and really of Odysseus's life that I have to get back into. But um you I was like, okay, like what are the parallels between JFK? I mean, Odysseus is a mariner, and so is JFK. He served in the Navy, right? So it's like, okay, ping, 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 we've got that. They both have their ships destroyed. They have to do these they have to swim through the burning sea to safety. They both get stranded on islands. There's this whole thing where there's carved messages, and I think JFK carved something on an SOS on a coconut. it goes on and on. One of the things that I thought was interesting, the one that jumped out at here is an episode from Kennedy's presidency. I've been like trying to get back into the mindset. It's like it's not just Apollo. There's more. And the big thing that was associated with Kennedy's presidency that set up the assassination in some people's conspiracy minds is the failure of the Bay of Pigs invasion. And I was like, Bay of Pigs, Bay of Pigs. Oh, there's a pig episode in the Odyssey where Circe turns Odysseus's men into pigs. And Odysseus, I forget the exact particulars, but Odysseus she eventually changes them back. And what's interesting with the Bay of Pigs invasion is that Castro captures some of Kennedy's men in the Bay of Pigs invasion, and ultimately they are ransomed back, which seems to be a pretty uncanny parallel with this whole story. And as I got thinking about it a little bit more, and I don't dwell on it too much in this presentation, but there's a lot of research out there about how events of the New Testament harmonize, or if you want to be more skeptical, are seemingly lifted from the Odyssey. I have all sorts of theories about this. Specifically, the episode, I believe it's in Mark, where Jesus encounters the demoniac who speaks about being filled with a legion of demons that are ultimately, by Jesus, cast into a herd of pigs, and then they run off the cliff. There's a lot of similarities between these two events with Circe and the pigs and Jesus and the pigs. And I see that is going to make sense if and we'll look, Gore Vidal himself even said that, and we're going to look at that maybe in the next slide or two, that there was Christ imagery with JFK. So you can start to see that not only is the Odysseus character, but that the Christ character may be descending upon JFK. This is not tight logic yet. I have a lot of work to do, but I think intuitively we all kind of grasp that there's something messianic about JFK. We can't probably put our finger on it just yet. And there's work to be done on that. But I mean, just growing up in America or familiarity with like Western content, JFK being this golden boy that's cut down in his prime. I mean, this mimics the story of Christ. But then it also demonstrates that, Odysseus is not cut down in his prime. Odysseus returns. So this is perhaps our first clue that there are more than one archetypes descending upon JFK. And then we have to think about that. Which one's stronger? And how do we weight these? And how do they compete? So, and what does it mean if they're hybridized or blended? So we'll get to that eventually. But I just wanted to show this right here.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
this is interesting. The other thing I wanted to point out, like you're trying to draw parallels from Jesus Christ's life. So like it's not just his death, but like the way what he represented in that society where he was operating in. He was like he he was an outsider from like in the society of the Jews when he was crucified, and he acted like it, and he had like very high ideals, and he was for justice, and he was this one man
Yep.
army. He was kind of a bully sometimes, and he's like, "Oh, get out of here! I'm gonna throw your idols," or something like that. He's like he has
And
this a very outsider energy, a punk energy
we
to him.
and Jordan pointed out last time, right? He kept company with prostitutes, right? We talk, so-called prostitutes with Mary Magdalene. And I didn't have
Well,
a
that's
chance to.
not what I said,
No, no,
but
no, no. I that's not what you said, but you pointed out the similarity between Mary Magdalene and Marilyn Monroe, which I didn't have I didn't have a chance to go deep on that.
yeah.
But
What I was
that's
trying to say
one way
more
to
was
parallel.
there's clearly projections happening onto them.
Yeah.
We don't really know in the case of Marilyn Monroe what we don't actually know. And anyway, but yes, separately, yes. Sorry.
Uh, Ostic may know this. You're a big Beatles fan. Are you familiar with the group XTC? They're very
XTC.
Beatles inspired. They were like a late 70s to early 90s band. They have a lot of influence on air quotes pop music in like indie circles during that time. But XTC had a song called The Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead, where it's, if memory serves me correctly, there's it's a very thin allusion to JFK, the JFK assassination. I think it's acted out in the video with Christological allusions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very compelling story. The way it has integrated into our lives, it's like the way people reacted to it was not too dissimilar from what Christians might have felt when they saw Christ being crucified on that day. So it's like how could you do this? How could this thing happen to this president?
Yeah,
Because his image was so pure, and he was like this ambitious guy who was talking about going to the moon, and he was like, I'm going to stop this Castro guy from taking in Soviet missiles right next to our country. And like to the general public, his visceral energy was very close to that of a very idealistic the guy people actually cry a lot of times. I saw interviews of people that describe the JFK assassination even years after it. They start to well in tears. It's like it represented something deep, something hopeful, and it's like there was some good that could have happened in the American presidency. It's like a good man is there from their point of view, but he was
yeah,
shot down, he was cut down in his prime. So I think that imagery of Jesus, that's a strong, it attracts that energy to it.
certainly does. A point that Downard makes that I've not really considered like the psychosexual element of this at all, but and I was like, oh, that's pretty clever. The if you posit that Kennedy was killed as a result of the Bay of Pigs invasion, isn't it interesting that his antagonist was a man named Castro, as in castration, like that ultimately his power was like neutered as a result of this. I thought that was kind of intriguing. I don't have anything else to say about it, but he does bring that point out. I was like, I might have to explore that later.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, I thought so too. Jordan, you want to say move on to the next one? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank God thank God images are like worth 1,000 words, because it's too tough to review my notes. I'll just go off here. So I do a little running tally at the end of just how many king figures JFK is associated with. And I've tipped my hand here a little bit, like, Christ being the king of the Jews. But it's easy for me to forget for some reason that Odysseus was a king. He was the king of Ithaca. I don't know why that like escaped my mind. And of course the Apollonian imagery is associated with um, Homer's The Odyssey. And it called to mind a particular episode, which is Odysseus's The Trial of the Bow. Apollo himself, if he is the Apollyon from the Book of Revelation, it speaks of Apollyon in the Book of Revelation as an angel or king of the abyss. So Apollo himself is like a king figure. So it's like wherever I'm looking at with Kennedy, it's king, 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 and we have not even gotten into some of the other things so far. Like I'm going to talk about a couple other king figures here that are relevant to JFK. But in the Odyssey, we have this episode called The Trial of the Bow, and both of you may already be familiar with it, but then I was like, oh man, that's so perfect. So um in the return of Odysseus to Penelope, and he has to take on all our different suitors, there is this test, this challenge that's put up where he has to shoot an arrow through like 12 axe heads, right? And nobody can do this but Odysseus. Well, why is Odysseus so skilled with the bow? I forget the exact particulars, but I believe Apollo blesses or gives this bow to him. And everybody knows that Apollo is this master archer, and he bestows this gift of archery upon Odysseus. And he is the only one. He's the only one who can shoot through these different axe heads. And I thought to myself, oh, no, that's super fascinating, right? Because the Apollo missions are done in the name of JFK, right? Continuing the legacy is the only one that it was done for. I mean, you could argue that it was done for all the 400,000 employees of NASA or whatever, but it was really to continue the dream that was set forth at the Rice speech, right? And when you think about that in regards to the projectiles, right? This is just a new innovation upon an old technology of the arrow, right? And the Saturn rocket going towards the moon. What I did not know is that the trial of the bow by many individuals who are Jungian minded is seen as, and it makes total sense, and this is the psychosexual element of it, as a demonstration of the alchemical marriage, of the hierogamos, of the penetrative arrow for the sake of winning back Penelope. And I just it just keeps falling into place is what I want to say. So again, the projectiles to the moon, the archery, the similarities with Ulysses and the alchemical marriage is again snuck back in. It is this set of archetypes that is tagging this particular person that he cannot escape from. So that's what this slide is about.
I love it.
In some images of Odysseus, although I could not really find one that I felt super confident in, Apollo is somehow like behind him or acknowledged, whether it's through like wearing a laurel or some little symbol that is relevant to Apollo, which kind of intimates, although like Ulysses and Apollo have kind of an antagonistic relationship. Like sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, right? In this particular episode of the Odyssey, Apollo is like kind of merging with Ulysses, which gets into the issue of multiple archetypes constellating around JFK, because we definitely have solar figures constellating around JFK, but we have this Ulysses character, which many Jungians believe is something of a trickster hero, which we'll have to get into at some point. And this is not the same.
That makes me think even when there's tension between them, ultimately it is pushing him to his own individuation pathway. But
Yeah. What do you think, Ostic?
Mm. I'm still stuck on this imagery of arrow through the axis, and it's a beautiful image. I think I've seen this in a movie studio's logo. When it plays in front of a movie. I was trying to look up the movie logo. There's an archer who shoots, and there's axis that goes around. I don't know which studio it is. I thought it was Lionsgate, but it's not. But it's a beautiful imagery. And the other thing about Apollo being, it's a very, it's what we've been building up, what you've been building. Oh yeah, TSG, exactly. Yeah.
There
Wow,
you
got it.
go. Wow. That's what it's from.
Yeah,
That's what it's
I
from.
realized that. Yeah, this is a good one.
Oh, something I forgot to mention. There's just so much to mention. There are 12 axe heads. Well, where have we seen 12? 12 moonwalkers, right? Like
everywhere.
right. It's this
We just
number
had
of
12-12.
right. That's right. That's right.
You were asking me what that means. I think you have the answer.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, so when the arrow goes through the 12 axe heads, and if Odysseus in this particular moment is aligned with the solar Apollo, right, because the gift is being extended to him of archery, then it makes the case that we've seen elsewhere by Campbell and others that Odysseus is, at least in this episode, a solar figure going through the zodiac. His arrow
Mm-hmm.
is going through the 12 signs and returning. So
Mm-hmm.
that at least in this moment, we can see the solar king qualities supervening on Odysseus.
Mm.
What came to mind for me is Robin Hood. I'm sure if we studied that, a
Oh yeah.
lot
Oh
of these
boy.
things play out. Of course, of course, of course. But the story of the hero returning and they know who he is because of his archery skills. Robin Hood's a slightly different take on the very same thing. He wins the
Mm.
contest and wins the girl.
Mm.
What do you
What
think? Okay, you continue with your thought.
remind me when we get to at some point to, well, we could even bring it up at some point. Jordan, can you bring up a picture of Wano Savin or something like that? This is a
Who?
QAnon figure. Juan Savin or something like that. Maybe I'll do it and put it. You go ahead and talk, Ostic.
One
I was
O Saven.
hmm,
Is
I was
that
thinking about these axes in terms of if they're meant to represent seasons, then what would all these axes tied up together would mean? And that is what we see as a symbol of the fascism that Mussolini picked up. So I'm thinking about that in terms
mm.
of
Oh yeah, that too.
maybe if
Actually, I
they're going to compress time or something.
Jordan, if you could pull up one of those images. So this is not. I'm not trying to get into a whole QAnon thing, but it seems relevant to what we're talking about here. So as I do this assessment at the end, but I might as well mention it now. Um, because these archetypes are descending upon JFK, we have this mixture of individuals that go on a journey and return, but then we also have the fact that JFK is like cut down his prime. Can you do a side by side with this guy and JFK Jr.? Um, there we go. Okay, so it would make. I don't know if either of you are familiar with this, but a lot of the people who follow QAnon think that JFK Jr. is still alive and that he like faked his death in the plane and all this other stuff. And one of the things that they really spiral about is that there's this man who like shows up at all these different Trump rallies. His name is Vincent Fusca. I'm sorry, I had 107 as another character in the QAnon movement, and many QAnon people think that this is JFK, like dressed up, kind of shabbily like this. I have no idea, but what I'm trying to say is, when Odysseus returns to with all the suitors or whatever, he looks like a vagrant. No one recognizes him. Only his dog acknowledges him, which is so interesting, right? But nobody really acknowledges him, and it's the one of the episodes that reveals his identity is the archery competition. So I don't want to go too far into this. All I really want to say is archetypally you can understand why the culture is anticipating a return of JFK or a return of JFK Jr. with all this symbolism associated with dying and rising kings and kings that return after our journey. So we don't have to dwell on it, but I just wanted to bring when we talked about how they didn't recognize him because he looked kind of homeless, how that kind of feeds into the identification of this man who doesn't look very fancy with JFK Jr.
Yeah, people want to believe.
They want
They
to
want.
believe. I'm not saying this is. They want to believe these things. You'll so you're like, Luke, stop being crazy.
Oh no, not at all. You told me 10 minutes of slides,
Yeah,
so
that's right. That's right.
I'm trying to hold back.
Ossick's like, why are you polluting our minds with this garbage?
I'm
No,
not.
I mean
I'm.
it's cool. I
Okay.
love hearing a modern example of the same story playing out. It
I
doesn't
think,
have to be real or not.
yeah.
Is Robin Hood real? Yes and no.
W-
It's this pattern that just keeps recycling.
Well, as I went through all these different kings and saw that a lot of them are about return, and I was like, oh, we're not done. I keep trying.
Return of the King,
Right.
hello.
Yeah, yeah.
Lord of the Rings.
Right. So like I really want to like I I really want to frame this conversation in terms of the Apollo missions, and then it became about the other missions, and now it's about and then it became about the Kennedy assassination and the Trinity test, and now QAnon's mixed into this. So I'm just like,
I think we need an extended edition Lord of the Rings watch party for the next 12 hours. I think that's what we need.
no,
Right after we watch Macbeth
I gotta
and
finish Macbeth.
Electra.
I'll let you guys fill me in on Lord of the Rings.
Well,
Okay.
which Macbeth are you thinking of watching? The Fassbender one?
I've been watching the Fassbender one. And the reason why, I mean, I'll just go ahead and tell people why I'm watching Macbeth is that I believe at the White House, I didn't prepare the slide for it today, but at the White House press correspondence dinner or in the White House, I get my facts straight or whatever, shortly before the Kennedy assassination, maybe it might have even been a year before, that a scene from Macbeth was acted out for JFK. It was the murder of King Duncan. So clearly Macbeth is going to be part of this whole mixture. And we'll look into it as well. Like all these kings that go away and are unrecognizable and dying kings follow Kennedy all around. If I was an individual and had um this much of this imagery in my life, I would be like, I am going to go live in a bunker because clearly I'm not destined to live very long in this world. I don't know what archetypes follow me around, but it's not this.
I think we can transmute them, but
Yeah.
when you jack into external power sources, I think it's a dangerous game.
It's
The
interesting
other
questions
thing I
about
wanted,
destiny.
uh, yeah, destiny. But other thing is like again, they are people of action. They are constantly interacting. They're constantly tinkering with the world and revealing new possibilities. And it's not long that you eventually find something that might, connect with you at a deep level. That might try to mess with your energy in that way. I think being too much on the internet is also some of that, but it's like having these things happen to you in real life, that's another whole another matter. So I'm like, it's not like that these images are not following you. It's like if you put yourself in their position, you might start in your things would start amplifying. I think whatever's around you, it would start amplifying. Whatever you do, it might get a bigger reaction. Okay, it's like being a baby. He says one word, everyone claps for him. So it's like his life is a very amplified life. It's like it's the same with people in power. They have this very amplified way of life and living, the way they act out. So I think they have a better chance of encountering these images, and a more chance and more evidence and more conviction to not take them seriously, because for them it's like an everyday occurrence. For you it might happen. For me, I was like, what was that? How did that happen? But for them it's like, oh,
Hmm.
whatever, just another thing that happened out of 500 other things. So it's like that. It's like the
I
universe is
love
Well,
always
that.
telling us things.
I do want to push back a little bit against the narrative that like JFK was purely a man of action.
Sure.
He was a voracious reader, almost almost unbelievably so. And so he set a lot of time aside for contemplation. And I'd be curious. I mean, I'm not some expert on JFK. I'm kind of becoming one. If he ever sensed this tension that was going on in his life, but I don't know. It's I had a chance. I had a chance to ask Kai Bird some questions about Oppenheimer and if he could see the archetypal symbolism in the creation of the Trinity in test, and like it appears that it just doesn't dawn on people. So, anyhow, I want to speed run the next 3 slides. These are just kind of some data analysis stuff that I want to allude to. I'm and I'm not convinced that this is the methodology, but I mean something I've wrestled with throughout this conversation, throughout this whole study, is like, how do we get from simple pattern recognition and poetic license all the way to like, okay, this is like confirmed archetypal emergence around a certain individual. And so what I've tried to do here through Chat GPT is like develop a system of questions that allow us to progress from the poetic license to pattern density and recurrence to archetypal fit, internal coherence, collective resonance, and cultural instantiation, ultimately that archetypal emergence. Is this a good methodology? I don't know. It's a start. So I just want to point to that. And I'm debating how we would go, how we would take all these dense archetypes and rank them and assess their strength. We can perhaps go to the next slide, Jordan. Um, something in my mind, the way I sort of envision this is like, because I see Solar King imagery descending upon JFK, and also we have these Ulysses and all these other figures. I'm not convinced they all influence him in the same way. So maybe there would be a way to show these relationships through um, circles of influence in Venn diagrams, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not convinced this is the way to do it. I bet this is really an Ostick's wheelhouse about how to accurately portray archetypal emergence in individuals. And if we can go to the next slide, Jordan. and then I'll let you guys talk about it a little bit. I'm gonna need a snack break. I'm not gonna lie. Um, I had ChatGPT kind of do some preliminary rating, although I'm not really convinced. And I dug a little bit into the metrics. This is the thing, you can kind of like you can it's like kind of like casting spells. Like if I wasn't discerning enough, I could be like, see, I had ChatGPT do all this, and it gave the imagery associated with Odysseus a 7.5, and with Apollo an 8.8, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you really got to dig into how it's making these assessments. So this is all just provisional. I'm not sure it's good or not, but it's an attempt. And I don't know if either one of you wants to offer some feedback about how we can possibly make this more objective, more compelling, perhaps from a or is that like a fool's errand? Like, ultimately, these attempts at objectivity are going to be pseudoscientific, regardless of what you do.
As someone who worked on the political party, like I forget the whole name of it. Basically, they try to categorize party positions over time, but basically it's a bunch of people reading all the things that politicians say and then saying, in this bucket we give them a 10, in this bucket
Yeah,
we give them an 8, and then you kind of analyze and see how the positions shift over time, which is interesting. But it's how much time and effort do you want to put into it? When I think just a qualitative analysis is probably sufficient. Something I heard from Cal Newport this week in one of his podcasts about ChatGPT specifically is he describes the LLMs as really good story completion machines. And I found that framing to be super valuable because I already understood more or less, I'm not an AI engineer, but with some statistics, you kind of understand, okay, this is a probability language machine, and having that framing of, okay, this machine doesn't have intentions to have good or bad outcomes or influence on the person interacting with it. Really, its goal is to complete the loop, complete the story that you opened up with it. And that, I think, has been really valuable in the way my mind kind of wraps around how these things work, and not overly demonize them, and also not overly fixate or adore them either. But I think it's a fun exercise. It's, you know,
I think so. I think they can. I think they can give you a vibe or a sense, but I don't know how much objective meaning they can actually establish. I mean, Ostic's more on the computer data side of things. Do you want to offer some insight into this?
I I wanted to say a lot of the narrative around it is it's quite contradictory. Like they want to, whenever they want to promote it, they promote it as an artistic thing, because if you can because that is what you can sell to people, that is what you can sell to consumers. So that this is what has been associated with it through marketing. But like in art, a lot of arguments people make, that's not real, it's not that. But the basic thing in art is that you should know when to stop. Otherwise, like, what's the point? Because where you stop defines how your taste is. That is a taste making thing, and that can only be done through experience and through living life, through intermediate judgment. You Because AI has been trained to complete sentences, as Jordan says. It wants to, because whenever I prompt it, sometimes it runs on more than I ask for it, and it messes things up for me. I have to tell it, don't go beyond this, please. I don't want more information from you, you are messing it up, things like that. So it's like it does not have control over it. It has a lot of power, it has a lot of nervous energy to it. I'm trying to portray it for normal people because it's just a probability.
No.
It calculates what would be the next most probable word based on the context. So it's simply that. And I'm just speaking for artists, like they might think that they're trying to replace them. I don't think artists could ever be replaced by things like AI, even writers. What it
Do
Because in the end, experience trumps everything.
do you how do you think how important do you think trying to establish like objective epistemological standards are for what we're doing here, or is it just like totally vibes like all the time? Like, is this silly to try to give something that approximates a scientific rendering of what we're talking about?
Not a scientific rendering, but something systematic could be that you could think about. Like I was thinking, the imagery of Christ with JFK is associated him not by himself, but by what other people think of him. But like the story of Ulysses is what is something that is personal to him. So what you could
Yes, that's a
start
great
with is
point.
making a distinction between what people personally feel about their own story and how they are perceived all throughout the world by other people. It's like it's an interaction of different stories, what people think, like what you think about your family members, it's because that's what is actually happening. That is what reality, because we misunderstand each other in that way, because we have some internal narrative and then we look at other person, they think of ourselves as like, you're something else entirely. So that is the main contention. That could be an interesting thing. I
That could
mean,
be,
if you're going to
yes.
draw on a distinction, other than that, I think our own judgment is enough to qualify something as. I don't think we need AI judgment, but it's like it's just beautiful. It's if you want, it's like ranking, making lists of your favorite music thing. Like you
Yeah.
don't know, you cannot quantify it, but it's like it speaks more well to you. It makes the world feel more alive. So I think whatever helps that endeavor, I think we should not encourage that.
Yeah, there's a middle ground there. Like I watch like yeah, I watch like a lot of nostalgia music videos on YouTube and like nostalgia video games, and there's the the whole S tier, the A tier stuff that goes on. It's like, of course, like that's just the person's opinion that's put out there, but there does seem to be some sort of stability amongst people who are discerning about, there might be particulars like, oh, this is a better song than that one, or this is game is better than this one. But there is a kind of a remarkable stability amongst those assessments.
Yeah, it
So
This
averages
is
maybe
such a
out.
cool topic.
yeah, it is. I
There's
I don't even know where to begin with it. I don't know who's tried to do it, but it seems like I think it's deep in the literature. I think someone has tried to map archetypal emergence.
I think Jung tries to play in both sides of this camp. You guys are talking about the shared reality, consensus reality, and then the inner reality. You're saying sometimes they overlap and the inner reality matches that outer consensus reality, but not always. And Jung talks about introverted functions and extroverted functions, but you can replace those words with subjective to the individual perceiving. Perceiving is not a good word because he uses that in a very particular way, but bear with me. And then the external functions are the objective functions. Those are the ones that are easier for other people to follow your line of logic. Objective intuition can kind of say A, B, C, D, E. Introverted intuition is like AZ42. And there's really a role for both of them. This isn't exactly, I'll have to reread it. It's not exactly what Dr. Hollis talks about in his book, but he has a book titled Living Between Worlds. He's a Jungian, from my assessment, and I think he's been on Laura London's podcast at different times. I think he's a super fascinating guy if anyone's into Jung. But really, there's this very fascinating game we're playing as humans of always integrating and being in between these two different modes. And you can see it play out across a lot of dimensions, but this whole objective reality, subjective, qualitative reality is really interesting. We could have hours of conversation about when is it appropriate to translate this qualitative experience into objective maths. And then there's also a whole conversation of how objective is mathematics to begin with. There's a lot there.
Mm,
The more I dug into personally the philosophy of science, the more I realized, wow, these hard sciences are not as strict, they're not as unbending, they're not as objective as I really believed them to be as a child.
no.
So I think, in a way, no matter what side that you're investigating this phenomena through, inevitably there's a paradoxical element of it where you're going to kind of come to the other way. I think, to me, the journey of being a human is trying to synthesize these things. But the interaction is fascinating because how much does the inner reality cause the external consensus reality, and how much does the external consensus reality impact that inner experience? I don't think you can cleanly separate them either. And I know we're kind of digressing, Luke. This isn't exactly what you
It's
opened this up
fine.
with,
I
but
mean,
I think it's a really fascinating subject.
yeah, I mean, who knows what'll open up. I do think we need to take a break, but, Ostic, do you wanna have the final word here before we take a short break?
Yeah, just I wanted to add to what Jordan said about today. I was thinking about I was watching water dry and I saw water on the floor and it's slowly disappearing. Then I thought like why did do I know that it's evaporating? Like I shouldn't have known that. It's like it should have happened, and I should have been content with it that it's happening, that it's something that happens. But like knowing it and the aesthetics of it, the aesthetics of how you're taught these scientific things, like these cartoony diagrams and everything. It's like you're never seeing the real thing, and like even with the quote unquote scientific hands-on experience is done in labs. It's like the relationship we have with those observations during childhood. It's like the world is actually much more alive than we give it credit for. I mean, I'm just thinking
Oh,
about an
yes.
autobiographical thought. Just that I was regretting like why would did I have to be taught in that way? I was thinking about aesthetics. Like, wouldn't have it have been wonderful if it would have been a story or something, a poem would have been written about it, like this water drying slowly getting shorter and shorter and evaporating, and like that was going through my mind all during that time. So I just wanted to add to it, like the aesthetics, they play a lot of role in defining our reality, I think, like what we give importance to and a sense of wonder that we should have had, but like we were denied it. I think, and then I thought about like why are these scientists not teaching us those scent of winter? And like, okay, they are too far away to intervene now. I mean, I was talking about like people who have regained that wonder. They're not in teaching positions at schools. They're like far away. I'm talking about sciences, not humanities. Just that.
Okay. All right, let's pause there for a minute. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned last time, though I didn't really get a chance to discuss it. 3 is the secondary number associated with Apollo. 7 is the most associated number with Apollo. That would make sense. We've talked about how Apollo got his lyra and it being stringed with 7 strings, and that this is somehow connected to the arrangement of the solar system. And the whole reason why I got looking at the number 3 here is the number of astronauts that are involved in each Apollo mission. It's 3. So, and there are also 7 Apollo missions. So it would make sense that 3 and 7 are emergent or a part of the Apollo missions, but also part of the figure of Apollo, mythologically speaking. The example that is most obvious about the number 3 being associated with Apollo is the Delphic tripod. That's probably going to be the strongest of the ones that I have lifted here. Although there are others, the story about the 3 graces, there was also triadic cults associated with Apollo, et cetera, et cetera. But I just wanted to illuminate that quickly. There are other reasons why 7 is associated with Apollo, but I think for our purposes today, this covers it. Um, and I do know that we're working with a limited time frame. So unless someone wants to say something, we can go to the next slide.
I mean, just one thing. 37
Sure.
is an important number for numerology and geometry.
Oh yeah, 37.
Be- Yeah, 37. Because
Tell
37
me about it.
is a factor of all the numbers that all the magic numbers. Like 111, it's a factor of 111, 222, 333, 444, 555, 666 even. So it's like it's the biggest prime factor. So it's like it's an important number 37. And if you want to go there, so in room 237 we could
Mm.
try to create some multiplications. Okay, so we'll arrive at 666, so divide by 37 and you put raise an exponent of 2 over 3. So 2 into 9 18 into 37, no, something like that. You'll do it, you'll get 666. So that is what I was thinking about. I was thinking about a lot of things. I want 2137 is the 322nd prime number and all that. So there's that. And
Show us. I want you to show me the math next time, or I'll put it on a
yeah,
slide. So maybe write it out for me.
yeah, I'll do it next time. I'll take up all the
Yeah.
numbers.
Jordan, do you want to say anything about these numbers?
Oh, that's cool. I don't have anything to top that.
No. Okay. All right. We can go
Yeah.
to the next one. Okay. I think the next one's about dolphin imagery. This was interesting to me. I've known about this for a while. I just hadn't really thought about it in terms of JFK, and it was partially inspired by the Downard as well. He brought this to my attention that the heraldry that's associated with the Scottish clan of Kennedy has a dolphin in it, and I was like, oh, okay. And I knew that that the dolphin was a very significant animal for Apollo. You can see this like in the Miami Dolphins. I believe they went undefeated in like 1972, which is interesting because I think that's the year that I know that's the year that the Apollo missions concluded. So I wonder if there's some sort of synchronicity going on there. And I believe they have a dolphin against a sunburst. I think that's what their helmet is. But so I've always kind of known for that reason that it would make sense that the team that has Apollonian imagery would be the only team that ever went undefeated. But I did not know this about Kennedy, and the connection to uh, the dolphin and Apollo stems from he Apollo transformed himself into a dolphin to guide these mariners to the Temple Delphi. Okay, and so as a result of that, he got a different name, Apollo Delphinius, and this is where the name dolphin comes from. If you get deep into the etymology of like, why do we call dolphins dolphins? Well, it's a reference to this episode from Greek mythology. If you really get down to it, so that's just one of those fascinating things. And what I also realized in doing the preparation for this slide is that there are two ships that are associated with JFK. There's the CVN 67 and 79. And I'm a little confused about this, but if both of them have the dolphin imagery, but you can see that the CV 67 definitely has this badge with dolphins on it. And they have their own reasons. I'm sure there's like their own sort of military lore. I doubt they're taking into consideration Greek mythology in this particular episode and how there is dolphin symbolism associated with Kennedy. But regardless, we have these aircraft carriers and other ships that are named after Kennedy that have dolphins on them. And what was so interesting about the CVN 79, I noticed it had some very interesting dates associated with it. It was laid down on July 20th, 2015. Well, July 20th is the actual date of the Apollo 11 moon landing, and it was christened on December 7th. Well, we just had that, right? I've brought this up. That's the day that'll live in infamy. That is the Pearl Harbor bombing. So that both those dates are tied into this JFK ship is profound. I was thinking about this. I haven't had a chance to really develop it. There is something cyclical about Pearl Harbor. We talked about how on December 7th, 1972, that's when we got the blue marble from Apollo 17 and how that's connected to Pearl Harbor. What I have not had a chance to think about is that both those dates involve spherical imagery. Pearl Harbor, like we're talking about, so on December 7th, we have pearls, and on December 7th, 1972, we have marbles. And I guess the reason why they call it Pearl Harbor is that at one time, it was rich with pearls and they could be harvested there. And that's why it got the name Pearl Harbor. But I find that so interesting that we have globules associated with this date. We swap out the pearls for the marble. There's something going on there that I haven't really put my finger on yet.
Oh, I hadn't put that together. That's cool. I
Yeah.
like it.
This is very strong, this one. And
Oh,
you
you
can
think?
even see the snout of the dolphin the red thing. It looks like snout. Like when I first looked at it, it reminded me of a dolphin snout. The in the
Oh,
ship
the
on the
on the
ship.
ship. On the ship. Yeah,
Yeah,
they may all be made that way. I'm not some ship expert, but I can see what you're talking about there.
yeah. And it's how could they have dolphins, man, on the logo? This is a good one. And JFK
Good.
with
I
Apollo,
think
they
yeah.
tie it together.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think it's just one thread that I think establishes the descent of the archetype upon JFK. This in and of itself, mm, maybe not convincing enough, but against the backdrop of everything else, it's definitely strong evidence in my opinion. Okay, what's next?
Girls are
Okay,
obsessed with dolphins, wolves, and horses.
yeah. Well, there's lots of stuff going on with dolphins too. Like, I think they've done a lot of experiments on dolphin communication, like secret. And somehow maybe that filters into all of this. I'm not sure. This one will be real quick. Um, it's a reprisal of a slide from last time, and I think it adds a little bit of nuance to this. Uh, when we were looking at this image of the Kennedy brothers with Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Schlesinger and Harry Belafonte, and I went into the whole thing about how this in some way establishes their different solar lunar aspects, the cyclical nature of history, and the association with Ulysses and Calypso, right? Uh, Something that I think is stronger now in light of what I'm looking at is I was like, well, does it make sense to talk about Bobby as being the twin shadow figure of JFK? I was like, I don't really, in my mind, I don't really think of Bobby as like this evil twin. Well, that's not how it goes in conspiracy culture. I dug into this a little bit. There is some sort of consensus. I'm not familiar. I didn't really preoccupy myself with JFK very much. It's not a very interesting conspiracy to me, but I've done my work on it. I mean, it's fine. It's interesting. It's becoming more interesting to me archetypally. But the theory goes is, and we have no evidence of this. This is just the narrative in the mythology that is America. This picture is supposedly the evidence. The theory goes is that JFK was having an affair with Marilyn Monroe, and they had pillow talk, and he spilled state secrets or something like that. And like Bobby, in the popular imagination of like conspiracy theorists, was this like closer cleaner sort of figure, and he knew that she had the goods on, she had information that she wasn't supposed to have. So there's a lot of people in this conspiracy niche who thinks that that RFK was somehow involved with the murder of Marilyn Monroe. And so when we take that into consideration, him casting the shadow on her and both of them seemingly in this image because of the X on the back of his head or whatever, seemingly foreshadowing their early demise. It makes a little bit more sense why we could possibly call Bobby like a shadow figure, a shadow twin. Um, and what I've done here is like I've listed all the books that touch on this theory about Bobby being involved in the death of Marilyn Monroe. I don't know. I don't know. These are, there's a crazy image I showed Jordan. I'll put it in the chat. I'll let you guys talk about it, but maybe we should just bring this one up. Um, you guys talk about. You guys respond to what I just said here.
Yeah, I mean, it just never ends. The the level of detail that these things play out. I don't know what your
Yeah.
impression is, Ostic.
And I've heard things about RFK being a bit more gung ho about. I I mean, in my info, in what information I have, people think of him as like a more violent version of JFK. Like he was supposedly quite evil. I don't know why people think of him like that, but people talk about him like that. I know about Dorothy Kilgallen, the case when she died.
All right. I'm going to have to make a slide about this. Okay. I showed this to Jordan earlier in the week and I had forgotten who wrote the book. So clearly, well, maybe we'll just talk about it right now. So, there, like I said, there are like 20, 25 photographs of Marilyn reading. this one's kind of interesting because she's reading to a child. And by the this photo, something about this photo doesn't seem real to me. Maybe it's just so surreal. It doesn't look real to me, but it's been out there for a while. Like the child is like completely uninterested in the book. And she's just like, who is this woman who's reading to me that everybody's making a big deal about? But if you zoom in on the book's called Toys. And I, I've had several synchronicities with the material that I've presented here this week, but I find it, I feel like I'm like with playing with all this imagery, I almost feel like I'm playing with dolls or I'm playing with toys like that, like Marilyn Monroe and JFK and all these and the Saturn rockets, like these are just toys. And I feel like her reading that, and maybe you could, you know, read something really sinister into it in terms of like, oh, she's like this MK Ultra product or something like that. But it just seems like these are symbols that we can move around on the world stage, and perhaps they have their own sort of energetic connections. Now, look at who wrote this book. Toys was written by Edith Oswald.
Mhm.
So again, we have some I've got to do a slide on this. But this is like foreshadowing her connection to the JFK assassination
Yeah, the
with the name
Oz
Oswald.
is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
is
of
Oswald
course,
a
the little
very
golden
is it a rare name, Oswald?
Yeah.
it's
At
not
least
super
now.
common.
I mean, I think it became less common. In fairness, I think it became less common after the assassination. It'd be like naming your child Adolf or Osama or something like that after, big events were associated with them. So yeah, I don't think anyone's like, oh, you know what would be a beautiful name for a child? Oswald. I don't really think that's happening so much now.
And Edith.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is is that one of the mythological books that JFK was associated with is it's Edith Hamilton's mythology. So it kind of forms this nexus. Now, the name Edith is much more common. It doesn't have the charge, but I don't know. I thought about trying to find this book. I think it's not easy to come by. And it's pretty wild to me. It's pretty wild to me. But I don't know. Do you think that photo's real? Like if we go back and look at the photo of her reading, it strikes me as photoshopped, not real, but maybe it is.
It's so hard for me to say, to be honest.
It just looks like they're not in the same room to me. Their energy is so different.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I mean,
Maybe not. Maybe this is a real photo.
what advantage would it give you if you knew that it was fake? Like, what would be the
Hmm.
consequence of that for
It's a
you?
great
I mean,
question.
it does. I mean, it there's lots of there's I mean, there's there's lots of implications that come out from images being fake, right? Because then that means that there is intentional manipulation to insert narratives into the discussion rather than naturally occurring. So at what point is the mythopoeticism naturally unfolding and when is it being hijacked?
There's also a magenta bunny
On
on
the
the
cover?
cover.
Is there really?
It's pink.
There's a rabbit there.
And it's like line of red pink. It's not
Oh
like,
boy.
it's clearly
Yeah. And then you have like the golden hair boy, which could be foreshadowing JFK as the golden boy. And he is the toy. Mm. It's the golden child.
it does remind me too of artificial intelligence and how they the is the AI boy a toy or not a toy? It reminds me of that story a little bit, which is, of course, a riff on Pinocchio.
Yes, that too. Yeah. And the transformation, the gnosis. You go from toy to real boy.
Yeah, there's a lot
No,
here.
oh gosh, I did not.
Little golden books.
Yeah, yeah,
I've read a lot of little golden books as a
yeah.
child.
Well, and we're reading a big golden book, and now we're looking at little golden books. All right, all right, all right. Let's go to the next slide. Unless you guys want to say something else.
I wanted
Okay,
to
keep
interject
going.
Sure.
Yeah.
just one example. I mean, it's from far back. I should have given it a bit earlier about the topic of discussion of the Golden Bough today, and it was about like the son being sacrificed. Then I thought about, okay, another example jumped out to me is in The Shining, and when Jack agrees to kill his own son when
Right.
Grady tells him
Yes.
to.
Yes.
So it's like that,
Eh,
and another. I mean, for me, Shining is a movie about the harmful effects of paternalism and like not being actually responsible for the consequences. Because when Jack says in the bar, he says white man's burden. So I think that's a telling line of the movie. Like it's about what they think of themselves, and the butler, Mr. Delbert Grady, him dropping the N word suddenly out of blue. I think there are hints of this movie being in conversation with the paternalistic attitudes of the 1800s, like what people thought of them, like these people, they are silly, they don't know anything, they deserve to be our slaves and things like that. Just that, I'll let you go on to your discussion. I
Well, just
thought
to
I should.
just just to emphasize that a little bit more and to bring it home, and it makes more sense how the killing of the king ritual is part of The Shining. Is that Fraser talks about the ewes that were sacrificed to the Minotaur as being part of this ritual, right? Um, and so, and clearly we know that the labyrinth is a reference to Theseus. I mean, Kubrick comes out, I believe, in an interview and says that Danny is Theseus at some point. I don't have it off the top of my head, like where exactly he says that, but he changes the topiary to the maze to invoke this. So clearly, what Fraser is saying about the sacrifice of ewes for the continuation of the king makes perfect sense. Now, what Kubrick is trying to say in terms of a cultural commentary, we've looked at how some people have established that the JFK assassination is in The Shining in some way, along with the Apollo missions, but my focus has shifted a little bit.
Yeah, you continue with this one. We'll talk about it
Okay.
later.
I mentioned this earlier. This would just blew my mind. This totally blew my mind. Given all the solar imagery that is associated with JFK, weeks before the assassination, Jackie took a trip to Delphi, Greece, with her Greek actor and director friend. I believe his name is Alexis Minotis. There it is, which is interesting. His name is kind of got the Minotaur in it. But she took her friend, or he took her, to the Delphic grounds, and you can see her here. She is with the charioteer uh, at the Temple of Delphi, and this is Apollo's temple. Like Apollo set this up, so um, the fact that she's there like 3 weeks before Mr. Apollo gets cut down, I think is astonishing. Is utterly, utterly astonishing. And one of the other things that I was buoyed about, Jordan, you may want to read this. Gore Vidal, I guess he claimed, or it's been established, that he was like a cousin of the Kennedys, and he's a very prominent intellectual during this time. He was sensitive to these archetypal formations even back then. This is an article that I found on Esquire called "The Holy Family." I can't see it. I think it was written in 1967. But Jordan, do you want to read that for us?
Sure, April 1st, 1967.
Okay, good.
With Lucifer now rampant upon the heights, the surviving Kennedys are again at work to regain the lost paradise, which means that books must be written not only about the new incarnation of the Kennedy Godhead, but the old. For it is the dead hero's magic that makes legitimate the family's pretensions. As an Osiris Adonis Christ figure, JFK is already the subject of a cult that may persist through the machinery of publicity long after all memory of his administration has been absorbed by the golden myth now being created in 1,000 books to the single end of maintaining and power our extraordinary holy family.
It's pretty. The fact that he was writing this in '67, and I think he was writing similar things even earlier. Um, it just speaks to the fact that we're not alone here in picking up on this, right? Like we're not. When I read this, and there's much more that he writes. This is I'm cherry picking here. Of course, he's a beautiful writer. That was fantastic, but um, I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like if I'm crazy, Gore Vidal is crazy, right? And many people think that, but I was like, okay, it's good company to be in. It does. I think the thing that I have images of Odysseus and Christ here. He mentions the Christ aspect, which I've not really developed too much, but he's sensitive to it. I think, given what I said earlier about the pig stuff, like the Cersei turning the soldiers into or the mariners into pigs, and Jesus and the pig miracle, there's a lot to look into here in terms of Odysseus and Christ being similar sort of archetypes. But it's also mixed together with his Apollonian imagery, like I've mentioned earlier, given that Jackie is at the temple.
Yeah, this
Yeah, this is
is
crazy.
astonishing. Yeah.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
I only really know of adult like I think I've read some of what he wrote, but I'm most familiar with him because of his famous debate with Buckley.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I've
it's for
only
sure.
really thought about him in the context of politics and his runs like he ran for president. I've This is very surprising to me. So thank you for including it.
Well,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, this is
we're not
great.
done with
I
him.
always thought of Gore Vidal as an old man, like a old grouchy kind of man. Now, like seeing him, he looks good. He's pretty handsome, and now he's writing such good things. And like, oh, I need to reach him somehow. This is good one.
There's so much to read. I would, yeah, maybe we'll look closer at this article. But
And the
it's just
Osiris
interesting.
the Osiris comparison is interesting because it's about like chopping off the dick and spraying it
Yeah,
all over the country and hiding it somewhere. So it's like some sort of a castration plus fertility ritual. So it's like both of those things.
yeah. What Gore Vidal was trying to say there, I don't know. I can't say I went too deep into it. Um, and it may find, I've talked about Apollonian imagery associated with Kennedy, Christ imagery, Ulysses imagery, Macbeth imagery, Theseus imagery. Like we're probably not done. King Arthur imagery. We've got it keeps expanding what the imagery is. And it's like, okay. And what Gore Vidal's saying is like, look, this is kind of intentional. Somebody's like trying to put this myth together. Like there's whole like industries of people who are trying to do this. And he could see it happen in real time. It's not unlike what we're seeing like happening like with Charlie Kirk, right? It's like, I'm like terminally online, so I see all these like Agartha edits and these singing. I love the memes that are just coming. It's like is this just the bubblings of the collective unconscious, or could
What's
this be
trippy to
hijacked?
me about all of that is I have friends who are not online at all. And they have described things to me and experiences that overlay a lot. Of course, there's some big discrepancies and some major things that do not cross over. But yeah, like it seems to me like everyone's tapping into something that has some sort back to our conversations earlier about the subjective and the objective modes. There's something about this that is popping out that multiple people are tapping into, either simply through meditation and lived experience, and then also this hive mind memific, memified transference of symbols amongst people are trading them like currency. It's very,
No.
very fascinating to me.
Something else. Yeah, it is. Something else I wanted to point out here so I don't forget. I find it interesting because you went to the Delphic Temple um, for prophecy, right? It was a forecasting of things that were to happen. And I do find it interesting that, again, perhaps I'm reading too much into the imagery, that Jackie is amongst ruins. And I wonder if these images, in a way, um, prophesy the ruination of the Apollo figure.
Yeah, for
Maybe
sure.
not. Maybe not. I mean, but it's like everything. We zoom in on these pictures and it's all there. Like I'd never zoomed
Yeah.
in on the cover of that toys book. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's clearly in play.
The fractal is infinite.
Oh my gosh.
I do want to point out, at least I became aware of Jackie's visits to Greece through reading King Kill 33. So I know at the beginning you
Oh
opened
yeah.
this with some
Yes.
credits. I don't know if that's where you're pulling this from, but
I did get this visit to Delphi from King Kill as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then, of
that's where I
course,
got it.
you investigated it further.
Yeah, yeah, I did.
But that
I didn't.
book,
Yeah.
or rather, pamphlet, whatever you want to call it, it's every sentence is it's not dissimilar to these presentations. I think you're taking this further in some ways, but it is like very info dense.
We disagree on conclusions, but the analysis of some of it, I I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Yeah, I went on some forums like looking into it a little bit. There's even theories out there that like Downard is not a real person, which I was telling Jordan about. Like it kind of makes
I don't
sense. Like there
know.
are, because I had to find like an image for the title card because I wanted to make sure I gave Downard credit. And it was like a lot of like on the cover of King Kill, it's a cartoon or it's a tracing or something. And it's like, how do I know this is a real person? Like, and people are like, how do we know that this isn't like revelation, like some sort of meta revelation of the method? I don't know. I'm not gonna go into it. I don't want to impugn the other people that are associated with him, but it is super interesting. People were like, how is he able to like have these insights like prior to having an LLM or whatever? And I was like, I don't know. The whole JFK thing really just startled a lot of people. And when you start to see a little bit of it, like I could see like, if in like the 70s, would I have been the person just like poring over the microfiche in the library trying to figure this all out? Or like, could I have only had these insights because of some unique life experiences and the internet? I don't know.
Yeah, it's wild. Absolutely wild. And I would say your interpretations are not mutually exclusive to me. And we are in the midst
Yeah.
of the discovery.
Yeah.
No, this one I'm on board with. This, her visiting the temple and it being the ruins, and that sort of playing into and touching her life, like that. This is something I'm not so sure about the toys thing. So I thought like
It's
why?
okay.
Yeah, this one is very strong for me.
Hey, take what you want. I don't know. Like I don't. I'm just figuring it out as I go. I'm not. I have to sit back and I imagine I'm going to have to evaluate all the evidence and be like, what's strong, what's not. Um, let's keep going. We got a lot to cover still, and this next part is pretty mind blowing. Okay, this Ossick's going to like this. If you like that slide, you're going to love this slide. Okay, let me see if I can just talk through it here. Okay, so I just realized this morning, and I think I've said this already, that she actually took two trips to Greece, one in 61 and one in 63. The one to Delphi was in 63. She took another one in 61 where she saw a performance of Sophocles' Electra. Okay. And she didn't speak Greek, but you can see her in the audience. She's on the edge of her seat. She's totally enamored. She's everybody else is like kind of like, oh, this is a cool performance. She is dialed in. There's a little clip of it, like a little newsreel. I should have sent it to you guys on YouTube. It's actually kind of amazing to see. And then all the actors stand next to her and they do a photo op and whatnot. And you know, in a matter of like 2 short years, she's she's going to be performing the role of Electra on the national stage. Electra is known for um, publicly mourning the loss of her father, King Agamemnon. Right. Again, we have more king imagery and more king kill imagery. This time it's coming from Sophocles, right? So that seems to be a narrative that's in play. What I did not realize um, is that she was the very first person at the JFK funeral to ignite the eternal flame. So this kind of like I guess in some way shows the union between lunar anima and solar figures, right? That eternal flame is very solar. And I got to thinking as I was looking back at this, I got to thinking about it's like, you know what? JFK's presidency ends in with fire, right? And like the real presidency ends with fire, the lighting of this eternal flame. But the imagery of smoke and fire is with JFK from the inception of his presidency. And I went and I recall this. There were very strange things that were happening at the inauguration. One of which, well, at the inauguration, you can see JFK. This is the bottom right hand corner. You can see JFK standing next to Eisenhower, and Cardinal Cushing is giving a speech. And as he's giving the speech, the podium catches on fire and starts smoking. There's an electrical fire in the podium that I guess it burns out and they move on. I'm not exactly sure. And you can see that Eisenhower and JFK are like clearly like, what the heck is going on here? Why is the podium smoking? And maybe you could argue that this is like world stage theatrics, that like someone put like a little pyrotechnic to create some symbolism or whatever. They don't seem to be in on it. What's less world stagey to me is that Robert Frost was uh, was to read a poem. I believe it was called Dedication at at the Kennedy inauguration, and it's so bizarre. He's very elderly at this point, and he only gets a few lines through it, and the lines he gets to are about New Order of the Ages, and he has to stop. So the really you have to do the poetry analysis, but he stops a few lines into this poem called Dedication. I believe it's called Dedication because the sun is in his eyes. He gets blinded by the sun. And what's apparently the phenomenon it had something to do with sun and ice, which is so interesting because his last name is Frost. And then he gets blinded by the sun and ice. And he's standing right next to the Solar King. Anywho, he can't read his notes. And you can see like LBJ and others, they come up to the podium to try to shield him from the sun, but it's too bright. The sun is burning too bright and he can't read his notes. And so he has to, from memory, recite another poem to get through it. And I guess he makes a little change so it's more hopeful. And we could really go into the whole thing, but he recites a poem called The Gift Outright. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is there is some very uncanny fire and solar and I guess other elements involved in this Kennedy inauguration that ultimately culminates with the eternal flame. So, you know, I would put this in the Apollinian solar archetype evidence basket. It is high strangeness, but maybe these sorts of things happen at every inauguration, and I'm just making too much of it. What do you guys think?
Pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm compelled.
Yeah, this is making me a bit emotional, like thinking about it, watching it in slow
Oh,
motion, in a sense.
yeah.
So I mean, Robert Frost is there. It's like he
Mhm.
himself is a very poetic figure. He was I
Yeah.
think, the poet laureate, maybe. And it's like such a, it's a beautiful moment in a sad way, but it's like the world has synchronized itself in some way, made aware of its inner workings. Like,
I mean, I think you can see the archetypes like piercing our reality. Like you see a higher reality, like
yeah,
trying to punch through.
it's a it's a good one.
I should say that I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about the Kennedy curse. I've yet to establish this for myself, but I think I think RFK picked because or a biographer of RFK. I've got to go into this. Saw the similarities between the House of Atreus, which seems cursed in Electra, and the Kennedy clan, and so that just kind of makes it even more uncanny that she went to a performance of Electra in Greece in 1961. So I don't think I'm done with this whole Electra thing. It's for reasons that I don't understand. It's very hard to find performances of Sophocles's Electra. Euripides is I think it's Euripides. He's the one who also did it. Those are more common, but the tone is very different. So I'm trying to find a good copy of Sophocles's Electra. Haven't done it yet. So
I
anyhow, I thought you might like that one.
Yeah, this is good. This is very beautiful in a tragic way. This is.
Yeah.
I like your
Definitely.
research style. You're looking at the actual images. I would have never thought of looking at his inauguration to, dig this up. So it's a like yeah, it's a it's a good thing too. It's like you should check it out. I think for all the people watching, they should check these things out because I think reality might intervene in these moments.
It seems like I need to build that into my methodology. This is just how my brain works. I don't know what I'm doing. This is what I put on these slides here is what is going through my brain at every moment of every day. Like I don't know what it's called to have such picture thoughts, but that's what's happening.
I mean,
I think about that
you're doing these things
yeah,
with
I think
reality that people do with movies.
yeah, cuz I think we're in a movie. I think we're in a dream movie. So why not apply the analysis that we use uh, on film and literature and poetry to life itself? Well, we go, oh, you can't do that. That's all. That stuff's all fiction, Luke. Well, when you start to, a long time. It's almost been 10 years. It's almost been 10 years when I figured out that the world wasn't real. And so if the world's not real, why can't I use analysis that's for fiction on the world itself? Anyway,
Yeah, I agree. It's it's there. What it means, how it happens, a bigger mystery
yeah.
that we're chipping away at.
I feel
It's
like it's the
obvious.
logical conclusion, to be honest.
Yeah, it always baffled me in English class how they'd say things like, "Oh, all stories follow the hero's journey," or
Right.
everything can be broken up into these frameworks or these patterns, every successful story at least. Or, oh, this means that, symbolically in these stories. I always took to it. I really excelled at the symbolic thinking and writing essays in that way. But I did it something about it bothered me. Like, how is it possible that these frameworks persist in all of the literature we studied? It makes sense if that's how reality functions.
Hmm. Well, we've got 9 more slides. You think we can do it? You guys got a head of steam. I'm here to finish all 9 if you guys can, but it's probably going to
Just
push
raise a
us.
hand, Ostic, at any time. I'm sure we
Can
can get through a
can you
little bit
stick
We could
more.
around?
do
Can you stick around a little longer?
two more
What's
slides.
that?
Two
All
more
right. All
slides.
right. We might keep going.
Okay.
Okay?
So hop
Um,
out anytime.
yeah.
There's gonna be just as much next week, probably.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I got Christmas and stuff. We'll see.
That's true.
All right. Uh, okay. 560. I can't believe this.
It's so obvious.
Okay, so
This one's pretty, I think, obvious.
all right, so one of so I'm like looking for the archetypes to descend upon these people in any way that I can, and one of the most famous pieces of fashion that's associated with Jackie Kennedy is this sunburst brooch. Okay, you can see she wore it in her hair, she wore it on dresses, she loved this thing. And I was like, oh, when I found that out, I was like, that makes total sense. Like, it's like she's acting out the reflection of the Sun King, right? JFK is the solar king, and she is bouncing it back, right? It is hitting her body and coming back out to us, right? That's the moon is this reflective figure. It's beautiful. It's so poetic, and she looks fantastic. I have to say, this she was a she was a very beautiful woman. And I started thinking about just how Jackie is lunar and what in the different ways that she's lunar. First off, this whole like the sun, the connection to the Sun King thing is not random. This is not like my schizophrenic mind making this up. She loved French history and culture, and she was a big fan of Louis XIV, who was the Sun King, and you can see the solar imagery associated with Louis XIV here on the right hand side. So she associated this brooch with Louis XIV, who's Sun King, and I've made the case here that Mr. Apollo, that Kennedy is the Sun King. And then I was just thinking about it more when I think about like other aspects of Jackie. She, in my mind, later on in her life, she changed her name to Jackie Onassis, Jackie O, and it turns out that the O, as far as letters from the alphabet go, the O is and it makes it's associated with the moon. The glyph of the O can be seen. I guess its graphemic connection is associated with the moon, and when I see that now, it's like, oh, okay, she was Jackie Kennedy, then she became Jackie O. Kennedy, Kennedy to O, Kennedy to moon. And I'm like, oh my God, is that what's happening here? Not to mention, one of her iconic looks are these sunglasses, these massive sunglasses, right? Well, if if you're reflecting the sun, you're going to need some pretty big sunglasses. That sounds so crazy to say that, but I don't think it was intentional. I think this is again this archetypal reality layering on top of ours. One of the other interesting things I believe she turned 40 in 1969, or maybe it was 1972. I have to go back. But for her 40th birthday, she had these moon landing earrings made. And I guess it was of the time. And she didn't wear them very often. But the whole she thought it was great. I guess what I'm trying to say here is this choice of jewelry is not beating my suspicion that somehow she is associating herself with the moon, right? She puts on the moon landing earrings, the golden moon landing earrings. They're gold because the solar principle has interacted with the lunar principle, and so now we're wearing gold moons. I sound so not saying this, but like with this perspective, it's like, oh, it's always been there with her, and it's always going to follow her around. And we've talked about Marilyn and Jackie being like light and dark side of the moon. Perhaps I have them flipped. I don't know. I'm still debating this because people will want to say, well, dark moons are like chaotic or something, and that would be more aligned with Marilyn. I'm not sure, but when I think about Jackie, she had a lot of different looks, but like later in her life, she I think about her wearing a lot of earth tones and black, and I don't know if it's a continuation of the Electra figure and the public mourning that went on forever, which is an interesting contrast with Erica Kirk, by the way. But um, so that goes on, or if it's like this like darker new moon aspect, because there is this, the new moon goes dark. I don't know what to really make of it, but this whole reflecting the sun, blocking the sun, filtering the sun, and moon imagery is tagged to Jackie in some weird way.
I love how you said, like, it's the silver brooch in the shape of the sun. She's like the moon reflecting
Mm-hmm.
the sun, which is what we're told happens.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's I love it.
yeah. It
I
would
love
make sense.
fashion.
It would make sense that the brooch should be golden, shouldn't it? If it's, but it's silver, like you're saying. I hadn't see. This is why you're so good at this. I hadn't even thought she's reflecting silver light, which is what the moon
Right,
does. The
right.
moon doesn't reflect golden light; it reflects silver light. So they, with the heliocentric model, but that's what they say, right?
Mhm.
That makes it. I think that makes it stronger. I think that makes it stronger that she's the moon, that it's a silver brooch.
I do too, and it speaks to the alchemical marriage and how it brings out different qualities, the light of others, illuminating your own essence in a way. Of course, the counterexample is the golden moon earrings, which are pretty cool, but
Yeah. Well, that
yeah.
got me thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, the consummation has occurred.
Interesting.
The
Yeah.
mixture has happened, or perhaps the alchemy has happened, where the philosopher's stone has been produced. Right.
And who knows, it could be gold plated on silver.
Yeah,
Just to
maybe.
be
I think
silly, but
probably they were probably gold through and
they're
through
probably
if it's
solid.
Jackie Kennedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about her name being an O? That's like probably the most schizo thing about this, right? Like, I'm like, is her name Jackie Moon?
And they say Jackie O.
They do
It's
say
not
Jackie
like
O. They don't say Jackie
that's
Onassis.
that's how most people refer to her.
I thought about in the middle of the night. I was like, oh, I should look up what Onassis means. I think it means like a merchant or something. Oh, it
Maybe
mean he was a merchant. He was a shipping magnate, which is so interesting, right? Because it means to be born or to exist. It's also
Onassis?
connected to, yeah, it also is connected to onus, like burden or something like that, maybe.
Hmm.
So, but
Well,
I
that's
thought
very
about,
much in the spirit of the moon symbolically. When we think about the
oh,
sun being the spiritual and the moon being the material,
to be
to be
born,
born.
the philosophical child. Yes,
Right. And you're born through the feminine.
I think it works.
I do too.
I think it
And
works.
the moon in general is associated with the body in astrology. It's the satellite that transmits the other cosmic energies onto Earth. It's it's the vessel for like the spiritual to exist in the material. Well, it is the material, right? But it's the vessel to be born as a spirit in the world.
Yeah, that's good. And by the way, the fact that she marries a Greek man, right? That only
Mhm.
like reemphasizes the tragic Greek aspects of these characters and this family. And maybe the shipping magnet too, like maybe that, because we've talked about ships throughout this presentation and sailors, right? Like in mariners. So the fact that she ends up with there's continuity between Odysseus, the sailor, and the shipping magnate of Aristotle Onassis. Not to mention his name's Aristotle, which I don't. The only thing I can think of with that is obviously the philosopher. Oh, so his name is Aristotle Onassis, right? And it's to exist. And Aristotle's like this philosopher that kind of gets into the philosophical child again, the lapis philosophorum. Oh boy. Are you glad you're sticking around, Ostic?
Yeah, I think.
Feel
Oh
free
man,
to tap out at any time.
this is this is wonderful. I think this is one of the
Okay.
strongest one yet.
Okay. This
Yeah,
slide or this presentation?
this presentation as a whole and this slide in particular, the way it
Oh,
moves, like I could see the reality, peeking out from underneath the earth and expressing itself in that way. And it's so many symbols. It cannot be a coincidence. I think, I think maybe the moon was too important to her, but like, why only her? Was she aware of this? And like her husband being, this is a this is a good one. Lots of coincidences.
yeah. All right. Why don't I want to look? Let's just cut this down to 3 slides, okay? And we'll say I'll save the stuff on King Arthur and Mary Renault and all that stuff for next time, okay? I want to
And the
let's just
Simpsons.
yeah. I'm going to do so. I want to Jordan. Let's look at five. Let's look at 561 real
You
quick,
got it.
and we'll skip the King Arthur stuff for next time. I'll build off that. Um, this is this led me into looking at the King Arthur things. Was looking at the Kennedy funeral, him being drawn by these white horses. They say they're gray. They look white to me. That's very Apollinian looking to me, like Apollo being drawn by his horses. Now, apparently, this whole, um, doing funeral processions like this is pretty common. So it's not like, oh, this is not like this wasn't reserved for JFK alone. Is this strong? I don't know. Um, but it got me
But
looking at.
but who
I'm
else even
sorry.
died? I mean,
Oh,
only
that's
JFK
JFK's
was the
coffin.
one who died.
Well, I mean, RFK died, and RFK
Oh,
didn't get. But so RFK, this is
but but
RFK didn't get this treatment. RFK had a funeral train, but other. I maybe Gerald Ford got this with the these are called caisson horses. I've got to look into it a little bit more, but just on the surface of it, and I'm going to also look at Kennedy laying in state at the Rotunda. He's not the only president to ever lay in state at the Rotunda, but it's like there's a lot of solar Apollinian imagery associated with this. One thing I do want to point out here, this was the first synchronicity that I had during putting this together. I got to give a shout out to my friend Allegra who sent this to me. She works in the horse industry and knows that I've been fixating on horse symbolism. And she sent me this and was like, "Did you see this?" As I was looking at the horse imagery, a horse broke free from like a containment, like some sort of container at JFK Airport, and like ran down the highway out of JFK Airport, and it's like this seemingly kind of white horse looking thing, and that alone, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a massive synchronicity. And then I opened up the article, and she hadn't even seen this, I don't think, or maybe she did. I opened up the article, and what was the horse's name? Sundance. So that clearly is getting into this whole. So I'm like, okay, I think I'm on the right path with this. So how often do just horses break out of JFK Airport named Sundance, right? Like that seems kind of like a nudge that we're on the right track with this. I don't have a lot more to say about this slide because I do want to kind of wrap it up, but um, I just put is this a sign of Apollinian imagery? This I feel like the synchronicity kind of is like yes, this is. So we can go on. Unless one
one
of you want to say something. Sure.
okay. So if we're going to associate the horses carrying the hearse as analogous to the horses carrying the spaceship around the earth. So in 2001, when they travel together in the ship with them, there are 4 or 5 these people who are half dead. So it's
That's
like
right. They're in
it's coffin,
stasis.
and they're being taken to the
Ooh,
afterlife
yes.
in that sense.
Yes. That's very good. They are in like coffins, aren't they?
Yeah,
That's very
it's like,
good.
I mean, 2001 is full of these imageries about tombs and everything.
Yeah. No, it's great. That's great. You're right. Let's go to the rotunda real quick, Jordan. Slide 566, and then we're going to close it on The Simpsons. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, that's good too. We'll talk about King Arthur next time. There we go. So again, solar imagery associated with JFK. This is an actual photograph from him laying in state in the rotunda in DC. Okay, these golden beams of light breaking through, shining down on the casket, and it was modeled after the Pantheon in Rome. Okay, is it Rome? Yeah, I think I have that right. And they clearly they worship the sun there, right? Helios and Apollo. So this is, I think this is pretty strong evidence, this beam of light, this golden, and not to mention Kennedy lays beneath what's known as the apotheosis of Washington. And you see that the sun that Washington and other figures are gathered around. Like, it's pretty undeniable that there's some sort of solar communication going on here. But he's not the only president. I mean, there have been senators that have laid in this rotunda. So does that mean, like, they too, like, does that diminish the claim that he's associated with the solar imagery, or does that expand it? I don't know. I don't know if any of them had the sun come down so dramatically as this. This is kind of considered to be a very iconic photograph. I don't know. This happened, say, during, like, I don't. I think maybe I don't know who else was laid in the rotunda. Maybe McCain. I'm not sure. I'll look at a list. You guys talk about it for a second.
This is the most beautiful photograph I think I've seen all month. It looks like an eye it looks like an eye, and it also looks like the universe in a mechanical motion that's surrounding, like the gears all around working, and even reminds me of that circle in Eyes Wide Shut when all those people at the party they circle around him. That this rotunda could be a place for ascension of some sorts, like
Yeah.
unconsciously. This is
Let me
a
give you a little list of some of the more recent people. George H.W. Bush laid in state there. But more recently, and this I haven't got into this yet, but the last president to lay in the rotunda is Jimmy Carter.
it's a few
There
days
are
ago.
some people. Yeah. Oh, it was earlier this year. It was in January of this year.
Oh.
There are some people who think that Jimmy Carter is JFK.
Should we go to that slide?
No, I didn't even prepare that slide.
Okay.
I'm not saying I'm one of
It's
those
on deck.
people. I think I'm gonna have to tangle with it at some point. They had there's been some military and law enforcement. One of the guys from January 6th, Officer Brian Sicknick, was there. Billy Graham laid there. So others have. It's not just JFK, but it is interesting that Jimmy Carter was the last president there.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
Was
why
this
would
action
people
packed
even
enough?
think
why do people think that JFK and Jimmy Carter are the same person?
there has
Oh
to be some
man,
believable reason for people to go?
well, they look alike. They look alike. Jordan, you can go to the slide. I'm not prepared to talk about it. I'm not even that interested in it. I'm not that interested in it. I'm not here to prove that. I think the biggest argument against it is the time, their ages. Okay. This all got tipped off like years ago. Jimmy Carter's like part changed during a press conference. He came out with a different part one day, and people were like, "Has this man been swapped out?" I don't want to go into it. I'm not trying to push this. All right, but You asked. That's why people think that they may be the same person. Okay. Let's talk about The Simpsons, and then we'll call it a day.
More?
Let's just one more. We're just gonna talk
Okay.
about The Simpsons, okay? We'll end on a fun little note.
It is fun.
Okay.
And spooky. It is
It's
on point.
okay. So I had probably the biggest synchronicity I've had in a few weeks doing this. Okay. So going into all this JFK research, I was like, oh, isn't Marge's name like Bouvier, which is Jackie Kennedy's maiden name, and so Marge's full name is Marjorie Jacqueline Simpson. Marjorie Jacqueline Bouvier Simpson. Okay, her original name. She's Jackie O. She's Jackie. Her name is Jackie O. She's named after Matt Groening's mom or something, so he gave her the name Marge. But she's Jacqueline Bouvier. She's Jackie O. And this is alluded to throughout the series. I mean, the one that everybody knows about, right, is when she got this like Chanel dress that she had to, so she could hang out with the hoity-toity elite crowd, and she was constantly reconfiguring it. And it's a throwback reference to what Jackie wore that day in Dallas. Which, when you really think about, as a kid, I was like, in my mind, I was like, isn't this a reference to Jackie? I didn't really think about like how bizarre that is to take a dress that's associated with an execution day and then make it a whole Simpsons episode, but not really include that reference. That seems kind of bizarre to me. And then, oh, well, wait, okay. If she's Jackie O, who is Jackie O, or who's Marge married to? Marge is married to Homer. Wait, Homer wrote the Odyssey, and isn't the research leading to the conclusion that JFK is Odysseus? Oh, didn't the Simpsons like constantly like refurbish old storylines? Oh, didn't they do one where they cast Homer as Odysseus and Marge as Penelope? Yes, they did. Yes, they did. This is Doe, Brother, Where Art Thou, and Tales from the Public Domain, episode 283, season 13, episode 14. And it's like, do I think Matt Groening like intends for the alchemical marriage to be part of The Simpsons? I think Matt Groening is a very smart guy who knows a lot of things. All right, like it's already been established that he knows a lot, and I'm going to get into why he knows a lot. Okay. And it already is kind of situated in this whole story is kind of situated in the JFK universe. Mayor Quimby is clearly some sort of amalgamation of like Kennedy characters, right? He's JFK, or I don't, and wouldn't you know it, Homer and Mayor Quimby are voiced by the same actor, Dan Castellaneta. Okay. He was on the Tracy Ullman show. This show, The Simpsons evolved out of the Tracy Ullman show. So in a way, the same underlying person is associated between Homer and Mayor Quimby, kind of in a way making it tighter that he is Ulysses, that she is Penelope, that they are JFK and Jackie. Not to mention, Castellaneta means little castle, so that could be connected to the Camelot storyline, which we've not gone into. And I've mentioned earlier I mentioned earlier JFK being a naval war hero and Odysseus being a sailor and all that. Here is him before he gets into politics being given a medal. And then I thought a little bit more about it. And I was like, oh, who is Homer's dad? Who is Homer's dad? Well, it's Abe. Abraham Simpson is Homer's dad. And what have we seen? There's reason to think, given the whole way that Marilyn interacts with the picture of Abraham in the back of the car, right? That he's like this father figure that she was seeking. And Abraham Simpson is named after Abraham Lincoln. And I guess maybe this goes into the whole Springfield thing, and maybe it takes place in Illinois. I'm not going to get into all that. So maybe you could start to say that there is some parallelism going on between Abraham Lincoln and JFK and Abe Simpson and his son Odysseus.
The Navy connection.
The Navy connection. And lastly, second to last, penultimately, Homer works at a nuclear power plant. Homer works at a nuclear power plant, harnessing the power of the sun, because he too is you could maybe argue a solar hero, and he's like Ulysses. He's kind of bumbling, like a bumbling trickster in some ways, and he he in many it's a running gag that he like narrowly averts nuclear destruction, right? He's And then the synchronicity that kind of was the capstone to all of this. Marge Simpson, as I made this slide, Marge Simpson died. The woman who voices Marge Simpson in French, her name is Beatrice Picard, and she died shortly after I made this slide. It 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 was pretty spooky. And then you got to think about her name, Beatrice Picard. Beatrice, we've looked at this through the Divine Comedy, is is the psychopomp to the heavenly realm in Dante. Because Virgil can't go, so Beatrice guides Dante through the Divine Comedy, which is another narrative that we've seen in play in this whole saga that is life. And then Picard, it famously is associated with the man who took a hot air balloon up into the heavens and might have been the first person to observe a disk Earth in like the 20s, okay, or maybe the 30s. I got to look it up. So, and here she is in her realm, Beatrice ascended in the clouds.
How does that make you feel, Luke?
Insane.
Weird.
Insane. Can I be insane if
Insane.
I acknowledge that I might be insane?
I don't know.
I thought this picture was cool too. It's that one of those aircraft, the JFK aircraft carrier that we looked at earlier in front of the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty crazy.
Well, that's quite a high note to wrap it up on.
It's so insane. What do you think, Osik?
This is wonderful as always. This one was very interesting. The Homer thing. I mean, I always knew about it. I thought it was a joke, but like knowing that she was connected with Jacqueline, and I did not realize the symbolism was going so deep. I thought they were, oh, Homer, whatever. We're gonna name him Homer. I thought that was a joke, but like they had actually gone into it to connect it with Odysseus, and then Odysseus to Jacqueline, and that's a interesting connection. Now, if you think about it in the meta layer, his father being Abraham, that I think this is speaking in a very symbolic language about the history of maybe the American civilization as we know it. I think that is what they're interacting with. I think since they speak this language, that is why they are able to somehow predict things before they happen, not intentionally.
Right.
They're speaking
Yeah,
that language all the
that's
time.
Mhm.
yeah, this gets into it. It's like we're looking at these old photographs of like archetypal dissension on certain individuals, and it's clear their destiny is in there. So like why if you have a long-standing cartoon that is similarly tapping into this archetypal imagery, shouldn't it people go, oh look, Matt Groening like clearly knew about X, Y, or Z because there's all this 9/11 foot stuff in it, or it's like he's just tapped into the archetypal realm.
It's hard to say.
I think that makes more sense.
Yeah.
I think that makes more sense. I don't know how to fit this all together yet, but Odysseus's father is Laertes, and I don't know how this is all going to work. I have a feeling Hamlet is going to be part of this because Laertes is a character in Hamlet, and the story of Hamlet descends upon Abraham Lincoln. The story of Macbeth descends upon JFK, but the story of Abraham, because of the connections to the Booth actors, Julius Caesar and Hamlet are all mixed up in that, and Laertes is a figure in Hamlet. But I haven't gotten there yet. But I think it's part of it.
Yes, I'm hoping that we get there. This has been an incredible discussion. I'm happy I stuck around.
Yeah.
It was
And
like
there's
crescendo.
more. There's more. Like I don't know what it was, but I mean this all pretty much just like it felt like I felt like I was kind of channeling it. Like it kind of just it really came through fast this week. I had pretty much all the slides by Wednesday. And usually I need to I don't finish my slides until Thursday night. So I was like a day and a half ahead, and then we did this early. It's so I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I had been avoiding the JFK thing for a while because I was like, I just want to focus about Apollo. But so maybe just like all the material is so new to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the feeling. I mean, watching these, I know that I can feel that it's a different feeling to watch someone get that information in real time, and that's
Hmm.
a brilliant revelation. It's like that that has the ability to blow minds, and this one is very strong. I think that what you're doing is you have a gift, so you should cherish it. I think
I don't
you're
know
a
what I'm supposed to do with it. I don't know if I'm helping anybody with it. I mean, it's like I think about this all the time. It's like, is this just like oftentimes I'm just like I think like what I'm doing is like incredibly important. Then the other time I feel like I'm just playing with dolls. I'm just playing with voodoo dolls. I'm just like, ooh, and she's got this and he's got this, and they're so I oscillate between being like I'm doing world historical things to like this is I am losing my mind seeing the archetypal reality in The Simpsons.
Yeah, I think there's both high and low culture things. I mean, the high things I think about, like you're talking about Sophocles and all the other things, and Robert Frost comes in, and then you say, "Oh, some people think Jimmy Carter is JFK." I'm like, why this dime store conspiracy theory is being paired with this? I'm like, this is ruining the aesthetic of this episode. I was like so excited for this, but I
uh,
understand. I think we
I,
should
I
we should entertain everything. We have the ability to do so.
I what's in and what's out is hard to say. I mean, the thing is, the synchronicities seem to like with the horse that broke free from JFK Airport named Sundance, and then Beatrice Picard passing away while I finished the slide. I was like, okay, like I guess this is important because why would the world be interacting with it? I mean, it's just on my computer. It's not like I've shared it with anyone.
Yeah.
So, all
So
right, that's it.
I yeah, have a good one.